Hey, I'm Dave Anthony, and it's time for the McMunn Yates Turnbull Cup playoff update. As we get ready to get into round number 2, I'm very excited to be joined by some of the top voices in the game. Kevin Pauls of the Niverville Nighthawks, Cody Buhler of the Portage Terriers, and Darnell Duff of the Dauphin Kings. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me here today. Let's start by recapping round 1. Kevin, we'll start with you from a Nighthawks perspective. Give us your thoughts on the first ever Nighthawks playoff series.
Oh, I thought it was really cool, for a team that maybe wasn't expected to make the playoffs and did. It was bonus fun running into a classy organization like the Terriers. I probably was the best test we could have faced as far as a group is concerned. Two really good, well-attended home games. The Portage games I thought were fantastic. They do a great job there as well, and we saw that around the league. The attendance every rink was unbelievable. I went to a Winkler Steinbach game two in between, and it was just blown away with the presence of the fans and the crowd, both from Steinbach and Winkler. So, from a Nighthawks standpoint, I thought the first round was great. They got a win under their belt. They broke the seal, and hopefully, there's more of those in the future.
Cody, from a Terriers perspective, a rare off year last year from the postseason. Did you get a sense that the fans missed it and maybe appreciated a little bit more getting back and having some success in round 1?
Yeah, it was great to see the fans back in full force. And it was kind of an extended break with not only last year, but with COVID the year before that, and then the playoffs getting shut down the year prior. It's been a while since we've seen playoff hockey in Portage. And so the fans came out. We had more fans than we even expected. And so that was huge, and we really appreciated that. The series maybe didn't start quite how we expected, maybe started a little bit slow, and there was some of the rough stuff in game one. But I just want to say a shout out to the Niverville organization and the Niverville fans. When we went back there for game number 2, they were so accommodating, they were so welcoming, and they were great. And they were just great to deal with. And so we definitely do want to give them a bit of a shout out as well.
Darnell, from the Dauphin Kings perspective, coming in as defending Turnbull Cup champions, was there a buzz in the town? And I know that you were in Swan Valley as well as a first place team in the West. Just take us through that dogfight of a series.
Yeah, I think the fan bases were fantastic for Swan Valley and for Dauphin. At Credit Union Place, Swan River brought like 200 fans. They were loud, they were raucous, they were having a lot of fun. You just saw that pride for their hometown community. And when it comes to Dauphin, they went to Swan River and they had, a couple of hundred fans as well. And fans were treated to one heck of a series. It was a slugfest. It was a battle. Guys were playing injured. They were playing fatigued. It's crazy to know what goes into a playoff series and how hard it is to win 4 games against one team. It's tough at the end of the day. I mean, you saw double overtime games in game number 4 and 5. And other than that, every other game in the series was a 1-goal game with the exception of game number 6, which the Stampeders won 4-1 and a 6-3 game earlier in the series. But this really was one of the better playoff series that I have been a part of, and proud to say that. And best of luck to the Stampeders, who, led by Barry Wolf, certainly deserve it. Their big time guys came up clutch at a big time, and they deserve to move on to the second round.
Yeah, I heard similar sentiments coming up from Verdun and OCN, just battles and really earning every inch of ice. And, Verdun eventually coming out of that in 6 hard-fought games. And then Steinbach in Winkler was everything we hoped it would be and more. 2 long-standing rivals, ton of respect, of course, but tons of physicality and chirping and big-time players stepping up and role players taking a bigger step. Goaltending was sensational. It was really epic series that deserved 7 games and went right down to the wire. And both fan bases were just electric in every game. It was absolutely fantastic. And I will say that, Winkler, I'm sure, Darnell, you'd say the same about the Kings. We could make cases for the Blizzard and the Nighthawks. Any team that got knocked out in the first round could have gone on to win the championship this year. That's how talented the MJHL was specifically this year. There was some real talent up and down this league. Let's go to round number 2 previews. And Cody Buhler, we'll start with you. Take us through what you learned about your club, the Portage Terriers, through round 1 that you hope to see them kind of continue for a successful round 2.
Yeah, absolutely. As we kind of moved through round 1, the team really progressed. We saw maybe a bit of a slow start in a lot of the games, but then the offense kind of picked up as the game went along. There was the goaltender switch midway through. Monteith got the win in games 1 and 2. He lost in game 3, and then the Terriers switched goaltenders after that. to Jaden Catelier, and Catelier played really great in the last 2 games, and the team picked up the win in the series. And so it was nice to see different guys stepping up as the series went along. The top line is going to be huge as Botterill, Stubbs, and Peters are playing really well together. And then it's going to be interesting to see who can come back in the series. Clausen was hurt in game number 1. He could be back as soon as this next round. And then Matt Wisner's been out for over a month, and he could be back soon as well. We don't know exactly when, but those are 2 big-time players for the Terriers that they hope to have back.
Darnell, I'm going to ask you to speak on the Verdun Oil Capitals coming from the West Division. You've seen them quite a bit. What has made them so successful? Looking all the way back to mid-December, they have been one of the hottest teams in the MJHL. How have they done it, and can they continue to do it against a very deep Portage Terrier team?
Well, I think this just goes to show how well, Tyson Ramsey, head coach and general manager, has done with this organization. They're a team that almost sort of lulls you to sleep as far as their defensive strategy. They really focus on play in their own end first, locking you down, stopping you at the blue line, not allowing to get in the defensive zone. And if they do, Trevor Hunt, one of their forefront on the back end, is really good at moving the puck up the ice. And then they're also good, it seems, at capitalizing when they get an opportunity. They may only get, 3, 4, 5 opportunities in a period, but if they can capitalize on those chances, which they have in the past, this is what makes this team dynamic. Now, they started their first round series with Eric Reed, who had a great regular season, a great story of a hometown boy, born in Verdun, born and raised, getting the chance to play with his junior hockey team. But then they brought in Owen Larocque, and they were both Cole goaltenders of the year, and Larocque was fantastic in the remainder of their series against OCN. And it's not like they weren't getting chances against them. OCN has some pretty high firepower, but this Oil Capitals team, they're really sound defensively. They're also good offensively when they get the chances, and they've proven that they can get the job done between the pipes. So yes, Portage is certainly heading into the series at favorites. With that being said, I don't think this Oil Capitals team can be taken lightly. I've seen them, how well they've been playing since December. It's extremely impressive, and I expect them to give the Terriers, I should say, a real good test.
Kevin, a bit of an outsider's point of view coming from you on this series. For me, it stands out. Goaltending of Portage will be a question. Depth for Verdun will be a question, because we know how deep Portage is, especially on the back end. What question do you think is bigger and looming larger in this series? Portage goaltending or Verdun depth?
Well, initially that was my question about Verdun coming in. They proved me wrong. I picked OCN to win that series based on some of the big guns in OCN, but I did talk about the Verdun mindset, and they bring their lunch pail to work every day, and they work as a committee. And, looking at their top scorers with Gorchinski, Chasko, Miller, Rubizin is fantastic as well. And, also Trevor Hunt, I think, is in their top 5 as well. So the goaltending will play certainly a key, but I think it's going to boil down to, like what you said, with depth. What we saw with the Terriers was a relentless forecheck. They didn't give you much time and space coming out of the zone, caused a lot of the Nighthawk players to make mistakes up in that blue line area. And I witnessed, a number of goals scored from just that pressure up top. And then also the relentless forecheck. If you don't have a lot of time to make good, smart plays up ice, sooner or later it's going to end up in your zone. And they have so many defensemen and so many forwards that can step in at any given time. Watching Austin Peters play is so fantastic. Mike Stubbs as well. And we're not even talking about the Botterills and the Calders and the McCartneys. There's so many other weapons there with Portage. I think it's going to be tough for Verdun to contain, but I won't ever rule out the Verdun Oil Caps again.
Cody, I know that the Terriers went 4-0 against the Verdun Oil Capitals in the regular season. They put up some pretty impressive numbers as well. It usually doesn't translate into the playoffs. So how do you see Portage going about finding offense, and have they scored playoff type goals against the Nighthawks, and can they continue that against an Oil Caps team that's a little stingier defensively?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Regular season is completely different than the playoffs, but the team was scoring well in the first round against Niverville because there are so many lines that can do it. We've already talked about the top line, but the CISO, McLean, and Stanek line was getting some chemistry. McLean had a great goal in game number 5. That was an important one. And so offense really hasn't been the problem this year. The defense has been great. Laquette was probably our best player in the first 2 games. He had a hat trick in the first game from the blue line. And so these guys can do it, whether they're coming in off the rush. We have a great attack off the rush. The power play scored, I think, a goal in almost every game of the series. So it's going to be important to keep finding the back of the net. And then obviously we'll see how we can handle the Verdun attack.
Darnell, the Oil Capitals special teams have been pretty impressive. They were in round number 1 against the OCN Blizzard, 3rd on the power play, and 4th on the penalty kill. The Terriers have been known to have a lethal power play, but they have struggled on the penalty kill in the opening round. How do you see Verdun being able to take advantage, maybe special teams-wise, early in this series?
Well, when they get power play chances, they're going to have to score. I think Nolan Chasko, a guy who thought maybe he was going to start or play this season in the Western Hockey League, ultimately did not happen. I think he's a guy who's going to have to come up big in this series. I look at guys like Dean Gorchinski, Colton Miller, who I really like the play of Colton Miller, especially when he gets into the tight corners. He's a big guy who likes to jam in the corners and get to the front of the net. I think that's going to work. But with that being said, if Verdun wants to have any chance in this series, they have to stay out of the penalty box. As Cody knows, the Terriers are so lethal offensively, especially on a 5-on-4. They move the puck so quickly. Austin Peters on the back end, McCartney, and then Ryan Botterill, who seems to score every time that he touches the puck. So I think if Verdun can stay out of the penalty box and continue to do what they do offensively when they're on a 5-on-4 led by guys like Trevor Hunt and Nolan Chasko, there's no reason that they can't stay in this series. I do believe that as long as they stay out of the bin.
Kevin, let's just go broader view. Let's look at the fan bases. Verdun has always got a rabid arena. They really make it a party. The Terriers have been known to have diehard fans that can really make some noise as well. Just take us through what you think home ice is going to mean in this series, because game 1 does start Friday night in Portage. Take us through the home ice advantages and who maybe has the edge there.
Wow, very similar fan bases, passionate hockey towns. In both cases, I've attended games in those rinks and have been blown away with the amount of support that the locals bring. In Portage, you have the Golden Boy barking away all game, and you can certainly hear that shine through in the broadcast. So, in both cases, I think they're going to be fervent supporters of their home teams. I think it's really going to boil down to like what you were talking about earlier with special teams. And I think with the Terriers, one thing that they're very effective with is when they get on the body hard, it certainly closes up a lot of other gaps as well. And some of them play so strong. I think that's also something that they feed on the energy from the crowd. And I think that certainly will play a key factor into the series.
Yeah, and because it's relatively close, I expect fans from both sides to travel very well, and both arenas give an excellent atmosphere for home and visiting supporters as well, so that's going to be really great. Prediction time for round number 2. Kevin, you did okay in round number 1. I think you went 3-1. Darnell, I think you went 2-2, and well, I went 4-0, but who's keeping score?
Who's counting?
I'm just happy I won 2 games because I thought I would, I'm not very good at this whole predictions thing.
And Cody, you did pretty well in the predictions too. You messaged me after you saw the first video that we did, and I think you went 4-0 as well. Cody, so we'll start with you. The Portage Terriers versus Verdun Oil Capitals. Give us an overall sense of what you think the series will be, and who wins and how many games.
Well, I just want to say the Golden Boy, he's bought his tickets already. He's going to be ready to go for games 1 and 3 for sure in Portage. But no, we're excited for it. The team's ready. The community's ready. We've had a couple of days off since we wrapped up round number 1. It's going to be a great series with Verdun. It's nice, both on the Trans-Canada Highway, not too far apart. So I'm hoping that both our fan base and Verdun's fan base can travel. It's nice when you can see your fans in the opponent's building for both teams. And so we're excited for that. I think the series is going to be great. It should be a lot of fun offensively. I'm expecting quite a few goals from both sides. That's just kind of what we've seen a lot this year. And so as far as predictions go, I'm obviously a broadcaster for the Terriers, work for the team. But honestly, though, I do think the Terriers are going to take the series. And so I'll say Terriers in 6.
Darnell Duff, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, I think it's going to completely depend, as I mentioned, Verdun staying out of the box. I do think the Oil Capitals have some forwards that can exploit the goaltending for the Terriers. I think that's certainly a weak spot on this team. As many goals as they can score, I think they can be out slugfest as far as if Verdun can get going offensively. With that being said, I do think the Terriers offense will shine bright. I mean, you even have guys on the back end like Hayden Laquette. McCartney had a solid offensive season. So I think the Terriers do win this series. I think it's going to go to 7. I think they're going to have the home ice advantage at Stride Place and get the job on their home ice and advance to the league final.
Kevin Pauls, we'll get your thoughts overall on this series and then a prediction.
Well, like I said, I think Verdun brings a lot more than sometimes meets the eye to the ice. And I think Tyson Ramsey does a fantastic job with that group and maximizes their potential on the ice. That being said, I think the Terriers are just warming up. From what I saw, I think there's still a lot more they can give. There's a lot of supporting cast, like Cody said earlier. You know, Weisner's out, Clausen's still out, and they could return. So that just gives Blake Spiller and company more weapons. And I think the Terriers, like I said, are spooling up to something really great this year, and they're great on the faceoffs. They're great on the defensive side. So I'm picking Terriers, and I'm going to say 6 games.
Yeah, I was the only one to pick the Verdun Oil Capitals over the OCN Blizzard, and a lot of the reasons because they have different strengths. Those strengths are not only matched by the Terriers, but they're surpassed in a couple of key areas. If Verdun wants to play physical, Portage can do that. If they want to stretch the ice and play fast, Portage can do that. And with the active defense, they're really going to force very tight defensive coverage for the Oil Capitals, which can only last so long. So I got the Terriers in 5, but again, we have been surprised by the Oil Capitals all season long, and that includes even what they've done from December onwards. So if they end up making this a 7-game series or coming out of it in 5, 6, or 7 games themselves, I don't think anybody other than Cody would be surprised. So I got the Terriers in 5, and so for all 4 of us, it's the Terriers sweep in their second round series. All right, let's switch gears to our other series here in the second round of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League playoffs, the Turnbull Cup playoffs, brought to you by McMunn Yates. The Steinbach Pistons versus the Swan Valley Stampeders. Darnell, Duff, voice of the Dauphin Kings, you just got out of that series with Swan Valley. Take us through what made them successful and what makes them so dangerous coming into the second round.
It's incredible how hard this team works. It honestly amazes me, even thinking about it today, how hard this team can grind it out. I mean, their first line plays a lot. Justin Keck, Jacob Jones, and Trey Sauter. Trey Sauter scored a beautiful shot, a beautiful goal yesterday to make it 3-1, which ultimately capped the series. But they play a lot, but they never seem to get tired. That Game 6, you would think maybe there would be some fatigue setting in, but they're going just as hard, if not harder. And then you have the role players. We always talk in the playoffs, there's going to be guys who in the regular season maybe didn't do a whole lot, but in the playoffs, they step up their game. I look at a guy like Josh Denis, who scored a beautiful goal in game number 6, who went up over the glove of Dmitro Kubritsky, who otherwise played fantastic in that game. Colin Jennings, another guy, he's an X factor who plays physical. He gets under your skin. He plays with a lot of passion, and he gets the offense going. Warren Marcotte. This Stampeders team is one of the best squads I've seen from Swan Valley in a few years. I mean, I know they made the league final back a few years ago, but I think this team pairs great offense with really good goaltending. Kobe Grant, he is a special goaltender. And then their physicality and just how hard they were. Barry Wolf and coaching staff with Darren Webster and Dakota Mason have them working like a fine oiled machine, and they're primed up. This is a team who I believe is primed up to make a good run.
Kevin, you've kind of followed the Steinbach Pistons a little bit. Like you said, you saw them take on the Winkler Flyers in that opening round series. You've seen the best and the worst of the Pistons as they've shown that they can close out tight games. They've also shown that they can let some games kind of get away from them at times, but a real gutsy, mature effort in Game 7, maybe just the thing to push them over here a little bit. Take us through what you like about Steinbach and how you see them being successful in round 2 against Swan.
Well, I think the word I've used with Steinbach and their mentality and the way they present themselves is somewhat militant. Paul Dick does such a great job with that group, and at times I question whether or not they'd be able to respond against adversity, and that's what the Flyers showed. You know, there's a couple real low-scoring games. Flyers dropped a game 1-0, then back to Steinbach, where all of a sudden the Flyers exploded for 7 goals, and you just didn't see that coming. And then all of a sudden it was almost like the Pistons were questioning themselves. But the game that I watched yesterday was a group that was fully committed. Watching what Penner did in that game on the defensive side late in that game showed a lot of grit, and you could see that building throughout the bench. And I think that's going to be, the galvanizing process of that group. And if they get going, if that momentum starts to carry, and the message from Paul Dick and his coaching staff is readily accepted, that is a very dangerous group of hockey players. And like what Darnell said, it's eerily similar in Swan Valley as well. They do a great job with their players too. So this could be an explosive series.
Now, with all due respect to the other goaltenders around the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, and there are some great ones, but we may have the two top of the line studs going head to head in this respective series. Cody Buhler of the Portage Terriers. You've seen both Kobe Grant, you've seen Dominic Wasik for the Stamps and the Pistons respectively. Break down the goaltending battle for us and how you see that kind of playing out over what could be a very lengthy 7-game series.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say, is that these two teams, you look at them from the net out, both are great between the pipes. And it's going to be one of those games one of those series where the margin of error is razor thin. And whenever the Terriers have played both Swan Valley and Steinbach, you kind of feel like you have to play a perfect game. You can't give up anything defensively, because you know that if you find one in the back of your net, then it's going to be so much tougher to find one in their net. And so when you take a look at this series, both teams play in kind of smaller rinks. When you just take a look at the age of the buildings, the size of the buildings, the way the fan base even just kind of sits along the boards, kind of like on that one side, they are very similar, just kind of from an outsider's perspective. And so they both obviously are going to have an advantage with crazy fan bases, full buildings, loud buildings. It'll be interesting to see how many fans are able to travel just with the distance and with how many tickets are available in both buildings. But I think it should be a really good series, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Cody, just to circle back to you, both Kobe Grant and Dominic Wasik have had some big numbers put up against them, though. So I'm sure the offenses on the other side are thinking, okay, we can do that. We can find success. These guys are not perfect. And that is a different kind of mindset going into a series where, normally both those guys don't allow a lot. There's maybe a little bit of hope for those offenses.
Yeah, that's definitely a factor as well. And sometimes if you can get a couple early in the series, that can put doubt into a goaltender's mind. But even I think Plowman, the backup in Steinbach, he's looked good too. It's not like he's just a random goaltender who could get thrown in. And so I don't know if Steinbach would ever go away from Wasik, but I think that goaltending could be a factor.
Darnell, Steinbach's coming off a very physically grueling series against the Winkler Flyers. You saw Dauphin and Swan Valley. Was it a physical series? And how does Swan react when they start getting knocked around a little bit? Or are they the aggressors and kind of invite physicality?
Yeah, I think it was one of the most physical series I've seen, certainly in recent time. And I think when Swan gets hit, they don't worry about it, because they hit back, and they're fine going into the corners. They're fine battling. They're fine going hard. Like I mentioned, some of the guys I know from Swan Valley were not 100%. They weren't even close to 100%. But it's those guys who are still going hard into the corners, still battling, still giving it everything they have. I don't think, as far as physical, I don't think there's going to a team that's going to out physical the Stampeders. They have the guys, even their top line guys, Justin Keck, Jacob Jones, Trey Sauter. You would think maybe those guys aren't going hard into the corners. Jones doesn't have a lot of size. He'll go and he'll come out with the puck more often than not. So, and I think if it comes to physicality, the Stampeders are not only going to match what physicality they get from Steinbach, but I think at times they might even best that. And that's one of the big keys to success. Try and be hard on the Pistons. They have a lot of great forwards, including Travis Hensrud. But I think Steinbach or Swan Valley is certainly up to the task of bumping them and trying to get them as fatigued as maybe they will be, because I think although you guys will probably go, the night before, travel could play a factor, because there's a lot of distance between these two organizations.
I want to circle back on that. Does Swan Valley have the depth to do that? We're going to be playing 4 games in 6 nights, and they ride those top players, as you mentioned earlier, pretty hard. Do they have the depth to play that physical brand 4 games in 6 nights and potentially longer?
Yeah, that's certainly one of the things that's one of the things that worries me about the Stampeders. As mentioned, they play a lot of their first line, but at that same time, when I saw in Game 6, I saw some depth players coming back and scoring. Josh Denis, who didn't do a whole lot offensively in the series, he was finding the back of the net. But I think this depth, if anything, is going to hinder the Stampeders in this series, it will be the depth. But from all indications I've seen, I thought depth was going to play a factor in the first series, and the Stampeders came into Game 6 and pretty much dominated the Kings from start to finish. So honestly, I don't know what the answer is, Dave. Depth shocked me, their depth in the first round, but clearly they know how to get the job done when things get tough.
Kevin Pauls, we'll switch to you. We'll start the discussion with special teams for the Steinbach Pistons. Their power play struggled against a very structured Winkler Flyer penalty kill. The Swan Valley Stampeders under Barry Wolf also very structured on special teams. They were able to break through with that late power play goal in game number 7, but the penalty kill's been excellent. The power play, not so much. How does Steinbach fare if their power play is not going?
I think it'll just take, like we talked about before in the other series, that we saw the contributing players for the Portage Terriers starting to really showcase themselves, and we started to see that coming through with the Pistons as well. And it's going to take the Penners, the Clarks, some of the other guys to kind of put their hands up and want to be part of this series too. Special teams is, I think, the most important part of all this. Like, when you do get an offensive chance, you have to take advantage of it. On the other side of the coin, if you're shorthanded, your penalty kill needs to come through. So a lot of the weight will fall on the goaltenders. I think this is going to be a fantastic series. But I seriously think that the Pistons are starting to really wake up. I think maybe the Flyers put a scare into them, but I think we haven't seen the best from the Pistons yet.
Like we talked about earlier, it was a very physical, draining series, as I'm sure every first-round player would say. But the Flyers and the Pistons took a big chunk out of each other, and there's not a lot of time to rest. How much will mental fatigue maybe weigh on Steinbach, despite coming off that electric performance in game number 7?
I think that would certainly drain them. Obviously putting that much thought and re-energizing yourself into that, playing in front of a big crowd like that probably had a lot to do with it. Obviously there's a lot of adrenaline pumping there. Like, I felt it through the broadcast yesterday. Credit to you for doing a good job. But I think, as tiring as it is, these young fellas are aware of the assignment and they're going to bring their best. And I think once they get in front of those hometown fans and the TG Smith, they're just going to blow their doors off and come in pretty hard. So it must have been a tough series, but I think there's a lot of depth there, and I think they'll be able to lean on those character players.
And like you said, a performance from a Spencer Penner, Dominic Wasik, some of the big guns coming up big, could be one of those galvanizing moments. Boys, prediction time. Something to always remember that we're on video and get to look back on as whatever happens. And there's no Benny Walchuk in here. We'll watch this, just a reminder. Cody, we'll start with you. Give us your kind of overall sense of the series between the Steinbach Pistons and the Swan Valley Stampeders, and who wins and how many games.
Man, it's a tough call. I think it's going to be a really close series. When you look at the standings, it kind of was Portage, Steinbach, Winkler that jumped out to that early lead, and then the other division, the West Division, was kind of up for grabs throughout the year. But Swan Valley really picked it up down the home stretch, and they definitely earned their spot. I think they actually passed Winkler for 3rd overall down the stretch. So they're a great team. They definitely can't be taken lightly by the Pistons. And I think it's going to be a really good, close series. I think it's going to go quite a ways. Obviously, the first two going to be kind of the back-to-back situation. So it's going to be interesting to see how they can come out of the opening 4 games after playing 2 quick games at home and then 2 quick games on the road. I do think Steinbach, again, both teams are really well coached. Steinbach and the Swan Valley coaches have been there before. They know how to get to the final. I think the Pistons are going to take it. I think that they've just got a really strong club, and I think that they're going to be able to take it. I think it could go the distance, but I'll say they take it in 6.
Darnell Duff, who's had an eye on the Swan Valley Stampeders, take us through your overall thoughts of this second round matchup and who wins and how many games.
Yeah, I really think this is gonna come down to the wire. But when I look at game differences and who could be the difference in this series, I know Dominic Wasik is committed to play Division 1, but I think Kobe Grant, a goaltender from out west, has been through the trenches. He lost last year in Game 6, and he pushed the Stampeders to Game 6 last year. And this year, although he had struggles at times, when he was needed to come out and put a big performance forth, he did in Game 6. He made some exceptional saves. And I just think with the firepower Swan Valley has in that first line that combined for 195 points in the regular season and dominated in the second round, you pair that with some solid defense in Warren Marcotte, Adam Racegol, as of course you can't forget about Colin Jennings. I think this Stampeders team has what it takes to down a strong Piston squad that's led by Travis Hensrud. And of course, head coach and general manager Paul Dick is one of as good as it gets when it comes to his position. But I think the Stampeders win. I think it does go the distance. I think they win in 7. I think Grant's going to make a big save down the stretch and down the Pistons. But I think this could be one of the best series in MJHL history.
A goalie making a big save in Game 7 in Steinbach. Where did I see that? Kevin Pauls, let's turn a my frown upside down and let's get your thoughts and who's going to win this series and how many games.
Well, I think it's going to be a fantastic series. I'm all about goalie duels. I think it's great because it just makes it that much more exciting, and it levels up our attack when it comes to calling a game. How exciting is it to see a fantastic save late in the game? In this case, I got to go with depth. I think the Pistons edge on the depth side. I think the Stampeders are going to make them go the distance as well. I'm with Darnell on that because they surprised me in a couple of the other series and games I saw them this year. I think there's a lot of underlying skill and coaching that they've done there that just gives them a boost. But in this case, I'm hedging towards the Steinbach Pistons, who will take it in 7 games.
And I'm going to take Steinbach in 6, obviously, the voice of the Steinbach Pistons. I'd say that. But one of the things that I believe in, I don't know if we discussed it enough, is what teams learn from round 1 going into round 2 and what they learn about themselves. And the Pistons defense learned an awful lot having to deal with the likes of Zach Nicholas, Dalton Andrew, Zion Kamini, Mike Svensson. You have to move pucks quick, and you got to do whatever it takes to get the puck out of the zone. If you can do that and you limit time and space in your own zone, it makes those big offensive weapons from Swan a little less dangerous. Yeah, they can do transition, but Steinbach learned a lot on how to deal with the transition of the Winkler Flyers. So I think the knowledge of what they did to be successful in round 1 will come into play in round 2, and I think that they take it in 6 games. They steal one in Swan Valley, and I think that's going to be the second round that I got anyway. So it's going to be interesting to see. Kevin Pauls, voice of the Nighthawks, Cody Buhler, voice of the Terriers, and excellent marketing man, and Darnell Duff, voice of the Dauphin Kings. Gentlemen, thank you for doing this, and I look forward to joining again at a round table for the Turnbull Cup Finals, which could be just right around the corner. But boys, thanks for doing this.
You bet.
Thanks a lot, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.